Welcome to the Real Estate Dads podcast with Max Gonzalez and Trevor Celso. Our guest today is Edwin Epperson. Do you use the term retired Green Beret, or is it like a Marine, once a Marine, always Marine, once a Green Beret, always Green Beret?
You could say retired Green Beret.
Retired Green Beret. And we're here to talk about dad topics. You know, if you're a female and you're like, hey, I want to listen to some hard guy talk, this is going to be a great episode. If not, we understand also. But let's get into it. So Edwin, you've got some impressive, the military background is impressive also, but let's get a little bit of the real estate because you've had some pretty great accomplishments in the real estate space. So let's get to that first.
Okay. Thanks, Trevor and Max, for having me on the show. Appreciate it. Happy to be here. The background, so I guess we're starting from the most recent and then we'll probably crawl backwards. I currently am managing a private real estate fund. It's for passive investors. This will be my fourth real estate fund. It is a customizable fund, so we invest primarily into debt. So we become the lender, acting like the bank for real estate investors. Then we also have an equity portion of the fund, which invests in syndications, joint ventures, and those type of equity on the capital stack structures. Asset classes will be anywhere from single family up to multifamily and commercial, depending on the liquidity of the fund and how much dry powder we have. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So, closed over 150 loans personally, deployed over $30 million in the last 10 years. I made my first loan while I was actually my second to last year of the military. I was deployed to Afghanistan and made my first real estate investment while on the side of a mountain in Charlotte.
That's great. So were the other guys going like, hey, what are you doing closing deals while we're out here?
Yeah. No, we were running ops during the night and then we would come back and refit. And I had made some connections in Pensacola, Florida. And some guy just wrote me an email and he said, I'm looking to close this deal. And I hear you're a private lender. Will you be willing to fund the deal? And so I took a look at it and sent an email to my attorney, sent an email to the title company, sent an email to the appraiser. And I realized over the course of 2 weeks that, wow, like this is a type of investment strategy that you don't physically need to be there. I'm geographically non-restricted. And that was like eye-opening for me that I could leverage other people's time, knowledge, and experience to actually do real estate deals. And I was blown away. So I got out and my wife now girlfriend at the time, we were doing a Skype call because Zoom was not a big thing or any other type of video. It was all Skype. And we were on a Skype call. This is about middle of our deployment out of a 9-month deployment, excuse me. It was about middle of the deployment and we were on a Skype call and all of a sudden mortars started hitting our base because we were a little bitty outpost. Like we weren't on a big major base. Like Kandahar was like 2 hours away. We were just a little bitty outpost. So we were always getting random little test attacks. And we had a couple mortars and RPGs come in. Boom, boom, boom. Lights start shuddering and dust is falling from the ceiling and her eyes are getting big. And all of a sudden, one of the mortars hit our SATCOM antenna. So everything goes out. And so we get out. We, of course, neutralize the threat and get everything nice and peaceful again. And we had to order in a new SATCOM antenna. And by the time it comes back out to the compound, we get it set up. It was about 10 hours later. Got on Skype my girlfriend at the time. And her eyes were beet red.
Oh my God.
Swollen. And she in tears said, if there is anything that you can do. And of course, I would say that's a pretty rare occurrence. That definitely does not happen. But for her, it was definitely the straw that broke the camel's back. She was done with it. She said, I can't handle this. If we're going to be together, then you've got to get out. And I had proposed to her on that trip as well. So my intention was to marry her. And I just felt like internally, God had led me into the military back in 2002. And when it was his time to lead me out, he would. And I just felt like, hey, I had an opportunity in front of me. I'm marrying this woman that I love. She loves me and she's begging me to get out. And I said, okay, I think this is the right time to part ways.
Man,
wow,
that had to be crazy for her. Like just like all of a sudden you just gone.
Yeah. And it wasn't like it would have been different. I think if the first round had hit the antenna and, she wasn't aware like, oh, okay, the connection just got
right.
But the fact that you heard this boom, 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 and the lights are shuddering or flickering and the dust is falling. She knows what's happening. And of course, I'm like looking around, I'm grabbing my weapon because I was about to go out anyway. And then it went out, and yeah, that was it. She was done.
Oh man. Yeah.
So, there's a couple interesting parts to this. I mean, there's the romantic part, which I actually love hearing that this turned into, your future wife. But the other part that I'm still kind of like shocked at is, a lot of guys are used to doing deals on a golf course. Not you.
No. That's why I do not do business on the golf course. When somebody says, you want to go golfing? I'm like, no, that's too boring for me. We got to go to the
gun range. No, I actually, I agree with that. The gun range is great because you talk. It's a little intimate, because you got your headphone to your eyes and ears, so you kind of have to be kind of close. And yeah, no, I'm in agreement. Actually, we've got a couple guys that we go shooting with, and it's always a great time. It's probably about the same price too when you go through how much ammo it actually is for a day of golf.
By the time you get some ammo, but then it's like, oh man, the smell of gunpowder in the morning, the dew rising off the grass,
caffeine flowing through your veins.
Yeah,
it's a great feeling.
Yeah. Oh man, I tell you what, there's no other place on earth like it. So,
well, so I mean, this is great. So, and then about your kids. So, tell us about your kids, ages, and whatever general information you got.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I probably like a large majority of your listening audience, and I say majority just because statistically speaking, this is a pretty high statistic in the United States. My first two boys were with my first wife. Being in the military is not an easy life, as I just described. And so I met my first wife going through basic down in Fort Benning, Georgia, which is now called Fort Moore, I guess. So we met, and then 3 months after we met, I deployed to Iraq or Kuwait in 2003 to cross the border in the invasion. And of course, we were over there, and guys were getting VHS tapes or CDs.
Oh God!
A friend breaking up with them, their wife saying, "Dear John," they get "Dear John" letters. These were guys that we were. I don't know if you guys remember that time in our nation's history, but it was the expectation of complete and utter loss was very, very high. Like they were expecting Saddam Hussein to use nuclear weapons or chemical warfare on U.S. troops. Like that was the expectation. And so, matter of fact, when we got back from that, the invasion in 2006, we got back to 2003, we got back that summer. It ended up being like a 7 or 8 month deployment. When we got back, we found out our division, and specifically our brigade. I was with the 3rd Infantry Division out on Sand Hill or Kelly Hill there in Fort Benning, and they were expecting over a 95% loss to our entire brigade. Like their expectation, they had over 5,000 body bags in Fort Benning ready to be shipped over to basically ship the brigade back.
You guys knew this at the time, or this was like an afterwards they notified you?
After the fact. This was wow. So looking back, we were like, man, this is crazy. Like we were just like cannon fodder. That was the brunt of 3rd ID. We're a mechanized unit, so we made ground pretty quick. But going back to your original question, so I met my first wife, and after witnessing all these Dear John letters, Dear John VHS, and I mean just the havoc that it reached, like it caused the men over there, I thought, if I get back and she's been faithful, I'm getting married. And so sure enough, I get back and she was faithful. And I don't doubt that. I know that she was faithful. And so we got married, and it was, I don't know, man, it was not what I expected. And we can dive into that. I have no problem talking about that. I don't want to disparage her, but it was not what I expected, just from a young man's perspective. And
how young were you?
Honestly, not that young. I was 22.
You were senior.
22.
You were senior to a lot of the guys in your unit, huh?
Yeah, I was older than a lot of the guys that I was in the unit with, unless you were talking like your sergeant.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I hear several, levels of, I'll call it stress on a relationship. I mean, the first one is just this distance, and I'm sorry, if you don't mind me asking, how long had you been with her prior to your deployment?
How long had I been with my first wife before that first deployment? It was like 3 months. So literally I had made a decision to marry her without really getting to know her.
I would make an argument just for people in general that a lot of people, aren't really even identified in self probably until their 30s. I think, actually, I'll talk for men a little bit more. I can't speak as much for women, but for men, I feel like it's a lot more identified after kind of been bumped and bruised by life quite a bit. In your 30s, you're a lot more mature, have things kind of a lot more figured out. For women, I hope they figure it out earlier, but being deployed is a total other level of, I'll call it stress that you're kind of putting onto a situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So we ended up having two boys together. So I've got two young men. One he'll be 18 in November. He's in a senior year of high school. My youngest is just turned 14 back in May. So he's in his second year of high school. Or no, excuse me, first year of high school. So he's in ninth grade. And yeah, they live up in Georgia with their mom and their mom's family. So they all live together. And I get them a couple of times out of a year. Maybe I would say a total of 5 to 6 weeks out of the year I get them. And so, yeah, I think as far as the family situation goes, that resonates with a good majority because I think the statistic is over 55% of all marriages end in divorce, which is a really horrible statistic. It's not good for family life. It's not good for mental and social life for the mother, the father, especially the kids. But that is the society that we live in. And, unfortunately, marriage is treated as a commodity that can be traded. And, I would say I had that view as well. And yeah, it does irreparable damage. I believe it really does irreparable damage to the family structure, to society. But most importantly to the kids that have to go through that. And it's nothing that they had any doing or say in, right? Like the adults are thinking only of themselves. They're making a decision that's based on self-interest only. And there's a side to argue that as well. Like when my ex-wife and I were going through this, not even struggle, but just this degradation of our marriage, my thought was, do I really want to be married? Like, do I want to stay together just for the kids? And in 20 years, like the kids are going to move out. And we're going to look at each other and like, wow, we really hate each other and get a divorce anyway. So in my mind, I was still using a future possibility as a reason to go ahead and execute a desire to divorce. And really at the base of it, the core of it, it was all for selfish reasons. I wanted to live life on my terms. I wanted to live life for me. It was completely for self. It wasn't for my wife or my kids. And so, yeah, I made that decision. And I would venture to say 95% of all divorces are only in self-interest and self-preservation. Now, let me bifurcate that. Self-preservation. Now, there are divorces that are probably should happen because there's an abusive relationship, right? But I would say a large portion of divorces are actually instigated and followed through by simply the adults in the relationship have different interests than the family unit, than each other, and they are wanting the divorce to be free of the chains of marriage to pursue their own interest. So it's completely selfish. I would say that is especially in America, that is the case. And, Max, you mentioned earlier that, it's men are not probably mature enough till 30. And I would argue that historically has not been the case. That's only something within the last, I would say, 80 years, where, especially in America, where men are not becoming men at the age that they should be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. My comment with the 30s was really qualified by that the bumps and bruises and maturities that we get through life. And if you're able to get those things at an earlier age, then yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I do agree. So in my comment, even in hearing you say this, and I'm so sorry you had to go through all of this. And I actually really appreciate your honesty in regards to, your sentiments regarding it, because I think it's something that a lot of people probably should hear. I was a child of divorced parents. And yeah, it was a mess, and as a kid, I actually thought it was kind of normal. Like, oh, this is fine. And it wasn't really until I was older that I realized, how negatively it actually affected me. And then it wasn't until I had my own kids that I was actually going, what the fuck? Like, there's a lot of stuff that I was like, my thought processes on how my parents handle certain things had a totally new set of glasses, new shade, new tint, seeing how those decisions were made. And I will say that it's a hard one, when you're looking at that future and you're going, hey, there's going to be a period in 20 years where we're going to be, divorced anyway. I mean, that's a really hard forward look to really have in regards to a relationship. I mean, if you're talking about a marriage that takes a lot of work on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and you're looking out 20 years and going, hey, I'm sure that we're going to get divorced, that makes that day, month, week, planning a lot harder. Because you're not looking at it going, hey, there's going to be this great end result. The end result is actually not an end result. So instead, it's not investing in the relationship. It's doing maintenance. And I will argue that in regards to a maintenance sense, I guess we will talk about this a little bit. Emotional, physical, sexual needs, if they're not being met in a relationship, there will be a point at which the relationship will have a crack. And
I'd say that if you're not able to talk about that as well, that's really the foundation of being able to address those issues. And if you don't have either the freedom because your spouse is judgmental or defensive or whatever that case may be, it causes having those type of conversations either near impossible or just impossible. Like you don't want to have those conversations because it never ends well, right? And so I would agree with you on that.
Yeah. And even for some of those things, on a self basis, and I've said this on this podcast many times, but every relationship I ever had where either the relationship ended because of my fault or the female's fault, I got better as a result. There were things that were learned, that were taken, and within a lot of those, I'll call it relationship planning, relationship communication stuff. Like you right now, I'm sure you are married now.
Yes.
Yeah. That you took a lot of those previous experiences and now have made a very improved relationship as a result of your knowledge regarding all these things you're mentioning right now. Your communication, it matters. How to have these conversations, it matters. And those are things that you're able to, take into a new position and actually make great decisions with it.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
And I think that's for most individuals. God, I just saw the statistic recently, but it was how many people, when asked, after being separated or divorced for 10 years, were they happy with the decision? And it was like 75% of them said no. 75% of them said that they wish they had gone back and tried to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
And I thought that was actually relatively heartbeaking. When I heard that, I was like,
that to me.
It's just so unfortunate. I probably did.
So
I think
like
it was one of our
guys talking in the woods.
So, so questions for you also, Edwin, in regards to your kids, are you happy with how much you get them or do you want them more?
Well, according to the divorce agreement, I would have them every other weekend. So I get 2 weekends out of the month. And then, I would get them for our timeshares that we get them right now, which is we alternate Thanksgiving and spring break. We get them at least 4 weeks out of the summer. And then for Christmas break, we'll either get them for the week and a half from the time Christmas break starts to Christmas, or we'll get them a week and a half from the day after Christmas until, they start school in January. So those are our time sharing. But with us living down here in Tampa, Florida, they live up closer to Atlanta, Georgia. It's about a 6.5 hour drive, 7-hour drive. And so even on a 4-day weekend, it pretty much means that all day Friday, all day Monday, we're just on the road traveling. And so that's 2 days, and that's on a 4-day weekend. On a 3-day, that means I would be making them do the same travel, but only for 1 day worth. And they're now teenagers. They've got friends. They play sports. They're both in soccer. My oldest has got a job now, which is a good thing. And I don't want to break him or pull him away from the job because it's one of the things that I've taught him while he was here, him and his brother, is working hard and valuing good work and a good work ethic. So it's always been challenging. And, my ex will go in spurts of support and then spurts of, I'm just going to create more troubles and difficulties than what is necessary just because. And so, there'll go times where we'll have a whole year of she's willing to meet me halfway or something like that. And then there will be other times where she's like, nope, you got to drive all the way up here and get them. So it's very sporadic. There's no really rhyme or reason of when there's a decision. Matter of fact, for example, my wife now, Carolina, we had to go up to Atlanta to see a specialist doctor for something for her. And so we were going to be up there, and my wife loves my boys as much as I do, which is just, it's such a treasure. And they don't understand how much it is having a stepmother that loves them as much as she does. But anytime an opportunity arises where we can spend time with them, she offers that. And so she was like, we're going up to Atlanta. Why don't we go up there on Friday? We can pick the boys up on Friday. We'll go up to a cabin up in the Blue Ridge Mountains near Dahlonega, Georgia. We'll stay up there. We'll go see the sights, hang out. And then, I've got my appointment on Monday morning. And then after the appointment, we can drive the boys back down. I was like, that's fantastic. I mean, they'll miss, 2 days of school. Actually, 1 day of school. We'll pick them up Friday because by the time we leave here, Tampa, and pick them up, they'll be out of school on Friday. So they're only going to miss 1 day of school on Monday. And I know for a fact that they've missed school days to go on cruises and do things with their mom and her family. So 1 day is not going to be an issue. Well, it was last minute. It was like a week before. But I text her and my ex, and I said, this is our plan, and we will swing by. Like, you don't have to do anything. And it was a simple nope. That was it. One word answer, one word response, no. And so I said, okay, well, I'm not going to take this line down. So I included her father, which is a big influence because they all still live together. She moved back in with her parents. And so I included her father and was like, this is my plan. My ex just said no, but I'm wondering if there's, any way to work. And his response was, whatever she decided, I agree with. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things to where, you just scratch your head and you're like, I don't know. I don't know what to think about. And, going to your thoughts, Trevor, in those cases, it's like, earlier because the divorce was fresh and it was like, oh, I'm going to prove that I'm right. I'm going to prove that you're call it whatever it is. And you would just get really ruffled up and like, I'm going to be a man. I'm going to control this situation. And now it's like, you know what? Me getting mad at her or her father for in my opinion, a selfish reason. And they didn't even give us a reason, but a selfish reason. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't benefit the boys. It doesn't benefit my wife and I, and we're still going to have to go out there anyway to go to the doctors. So yeah, man, I hear you. It's those times and that comes with maturity. It comes with lessons learned. It comes with taking a step back and saying, hey, what's really important in life? Is it getting my way? Is it proving my point in this specific case? Is it worth it? Or is this something to just water on a duck's back, let it go?
Yeah.
There's always another time.
And, and I guess, within these stories of co-parenting, what advice do you have for, people who are going through that?
It's so easy when you're communicating with your ex. And, I don't know, I would love to hear her opinion on what it's like communicating with me. Right. But I think when we are
maybe we can get her on here.
Oh, what a story that would be. Oh,
so yeah. Yeah, that would definitely be interesting, Trevor. I don't know. So, as you are, as a divorced father or mother, and you're looking at navigating the landscape of having to balance and having and I've always wanted, my desire was, okay, it never worked out between us, but we can at least be cordial. We can be respectful of each other for the sake of the children, right? Like we can work together. And again, it would be like early on, like for the first 5 years, it was only one-sided. Like I wanted to try to be cordial. I didn't want to create division, and it seemed that it was completely the opposite coming from the other end. Now that might have been tainted because in my looking at myself, was like, oh yeah, I wanted to be cordial. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I as well. And that's something that I would recommend to co-parenting is we have to be extra attentive to the way and when you're sending a text or when you're making a phone call or you're sending an email, like do your best to understand the lens that your ex is going to be reading that text or reading that email, because they're going to impute into that email whatever they believe your attitude or your approach to things are. And they're going to read it as such, when really you could be completely the opposite of what they are interpreting. So I think having clear communication and doing our best to extract our emotions, because we as men like to hold ourselves not emotional, but our emotions are just different than females, right? Our emotions are control, anger. We want to get in there and fix a situation, right?
Fix. Yeah.
China shop.
Yeah.
Whereas females are just different. So we are emotional. We're just a different type of emotion.
With those messages, the term is, it's always tip of the iceberg. So the advice is that if you're communicating, make sure you foresee the way that the lens that they're going to receive that information. That's the key.
I would say that's one of the lessons that I've had to do, and it'd be almost extra intentional, that's a great way to prevent a divorce, is by taking on that mindset now as you're communicating with your spouse. Like, understand when you say something and how you say it and the tonality in your voice of when you're speaking with your spouse. It's like, if you pay attention to that now, you actually will step over a lot of landmines that result in arguments, right? So you're discussing with your spouse, and you can tell, your spouse, and when you've said something that upsets them. You just know it. And if you don't, then that's something that you probably should work as a man on your EQ, your emotional intelligence, to be able to decipher what your wife is, how she's responding, how she's reacting to what you're saying. And then you can change your approach or put a pause on that. And the same applies if you're dealing with your now ex. It's okay. Well, you still need to have that emotional intelligence. And that emotional intelligence, that EQ, goes across all different, it affects our careers. It affects our relationships with other men. It affects our relationship with our spouse, our relationship with our kids. We need to be able to read the room, or be able to read those around us. I prided myself as a Green Beret. Our whole job was unconventional warfare, guerrilla warfare. We would go in, and what we were trained to do. Now, we haven't actually done this as a unit for decades, but the training was, you were to go in, identify the group of rebels that were against the government, and of course the government being against what the U.S.'s interests were, but it was to link up with your guerrilla force and then overthrow the government. That was what we were trained to do. And so we had great training in how to read people, how to read the room when you're sitting down with locals in Afghanistan or a city mayor in Iraq, and being able to read the room and pick up on those things. And then when we came back home, it was like, switch goes off. Okay, like I completely ignorant of what my wife is going through, or how she's approaching things, and what she's seeing things through. So we as men need to have that good balance of being able to have that EQ and understand how our wife, or even in this case, dealing with the ex-spouse, like, how are they reading? How are they picking up what you're putting down? And is it in the same manner that your intention was? Because if it's not, then it's going to create conflict, and you're going to run across the same things that I, and probably like many of your listeners who are divorced, where there's just that conflict constantly between you and your ex, especially over the timeshare with the children. Like, that's primarily what it revolves around.
The most heavy thing laden with stress, I'm sure that could be. But Edwin, we appreciate you. And how do people get in contact with you? If someone wants to invest in your fund, they want to contact with you, how do they do that?
Best way to do that, you could go to LinkedIn. I'm very big on LinkedIn, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and also our website, www.bluebayfund.com.
And on LinkedIn, you're Edwin Epperson III, correct?
That's correct. The three I's after my last name.
3 capital I's.
Awesome.
All right.
Actually, I think LinkedIn degrades that and makes them all lowercase.
I think I saw that. I think it was lowercase i's, but yeah, I agree. When I wrote down your name, I put the 3 I's in my phone to make sure I had the capitalized, to make sure it wasn't a lowercase. But Edwin, we appreciate you. So to any of our audience, please tune in to the Real Estate Dads website. If you want to get connected with us, you want to get connected to deals that we are investing in, you want to get connected with other dads, we've got our camping trip coming up this spring, where we are doing a dad and kids trip. Get in contact with us. Get on our newsletter. Find out about what deals that we are investing in. If you want to learn more about real estate, you want to connect with the guys who are on the show, go to that website, realestatedadspodcast.com, so that we can get in contact with you. Edwin, thanks for being a guest. We appreciate you so much, and we'll look forward to having you back on.
Absolutely, guys. Take care.